Venezuela's president says he will not be removed by the country's right-wing opposition, and Brazilian prosecutors are seeking the arrest of former President Lula da Silva. Those are our headlines. My name is Reagan, Vignes, and welcome to From the South. Our top story takes us to Venezuela, where President Nicolas Maduro says he will defend his term against the opposition's attempts to oust him. The announcement comes days after Venezuelan opposition congressmen declared their intention to remove Maduro from office as soon as possible. Speaking at a meeting with the business leaders in the presidential palace of Miraflores, Maduro said that the opposition should focus on the economic situation of the country and not look to take political advantage of the situation.
It is a bit of what happens in the National Assembly, if you allow me to comment. There is a fight there between four economic and political groups to see who can get in and impose themselves. And they put their personal interests in front of national interests, their party and group interests and their business in front of the interests of the country, which is facing an economic emergency.
Prosecutors in Sao Paulo are attempting to arrest former Brazilian President Lula da Silva on allegations of money laundering. Prosecutors are seeking, quote, preventive custody of Lula, who denies any wrongdoing and who has said that the allegations are politically motivated. The request for arrest has to first be approved by a judge. Meanwhile, current President Dilma Rousseff, from the same political party as Lula, has rejected calls for her resignation.
Resignation is a voluntary act. Those who want me to resign are admitting that there is no real basis to request my exit from this position. Therefore, I won't step down because of political interests.
Also in Brazil, at least 16 people have died in Sao Paulo due to floods caused by heavy rains brought on by the El Niño weather phenomenon. Aerial footage of the inundation shows the severity of the situation as vehicles were stuck in water and people forced to wade through the streets with rubber boats. A new video by former Mexican Foreign Minister Jorge Castaneda has gone viral. The video, circulating under the hashtag I'm proud to be Mexican, is a direct response to the anti-Mexican message being espoused by U.S. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump. In the video, Castaneda condemns Trump's xenophobic and racist discourse.
Hi, I'm Jorge Castaneda. We all know who Donald Trump is. We've heard his insults against Mexicans. We've seen Mexican officials and stars occasionally respond, calling him ignorant and nasty. A few Mexican businesses have canceled contracts with him, but we have yet to witness a real response to the frontrunner for the Republican nomination. I believe silence and complicity are no longer possible. The time has come to speak out. We need a strong campaign in the United States, one where artists, politicians, activists, and business leaders from both countries give the lie to Trump, telling Americans that Mexico is a country of successful and proud individuals. Mexicans are not submissive, nor do we benefit from being silent. It's time to confront Trump for what he is, not an ignorant fool, but a wretched bigot.
Hondurans and rights defenders around the world are still reeling after the last week's murder of Berta Cáceres. Mexican activist Gustavo Castro witnessed the assassination of the indigenous activist, and his family is expressing concern over his safety. The Honduran government has said that it will protect Castro, but the same government was allegedly protecting Cáceres when she was murdered in her home. In Colombia, the peace process continues to move forward towards what many hope is a final and lasting peace. Our correspondent Natalia Margarita brings us the latest.
Deseo la paz y apoyaré la paz.
Colombia's Congress has unanimously approved reforms to the public order law that grant President Juan Manuel Santos the faculty to determine the creation and conditions of special areas where the FARC guerrillas will concentrate and begin their process of demobilization in the event of a final peace deal.
Primera pregunta.
This reform was necessary so that the government and the president can move forward towards the final stage of the peace process, which has to do a lot with the establishment of the so-called concentration areas, the mechanisms for international monitoring, and mainly the lifting of arrest warrants against FARC members and the leaders.
En ese caso,
This is the first time that a law reform aiming to facilitate the peace process draws the support of the Democratic Center, the party led by former President Álvaro Uribe, known for its fierce opposition to the peace negotiations with the FARC.
favorablemente.
Se debilita esa oposición.
It is evident that their fanatic opposition to the peace process has been weakening. Even the main critics have to come to realize that the peace process is a reality, and that what is under discussion is not the process itself, but the aspects concerning the implementation of the peace agreements.
De la implementación de los acuerdos.
Yet for some senators and analysts, the specifics of the implementation process must be agreed by the negotiators in Havana rather than unilaterally decided by the Congress, as it was the case of this latest reform that attempts to limit the FARC concentration zones to non-urban areas.
Es miedo que le tienen los políticos.
That's a wrong decision that exposes the fear that Uribe's party and other politicians have regarding the FARC's participation in politics. But at the end of the day, the concentration of the FARC members will be just temporarily, and they will have to accept that the FARC become part of the public arena.
Incluyendo al Estado.
The FARC delegation in Havana has denounced that the government is taking unilateral decisions regarding issues that still need to be negotiated, and that have made both delegations consider the extension of the March 23rd deadline. Natalia Margarita, telesur, Bogotá.
Presidential candidates in Peru are dropping like flies out of the race due to corruption charges. Nevertheless, candidate Julio Guzman says he will not abandon the race despite a ruling by Peru's electoral court. Keiko Fujimori, daughter of former President Alberto Fujimori, is the front-runner in the race scheduled for April 10th. Take a look at this feature from our correspondent in Peru, Rael Mora.
Keiko Fujimori is the candidate for the Peruvian presidential elections that leads in the polls with approximately a third of the support. She's the daughter of former head of state Alberto Fujimori, who is currently serving a sentence for corruption and crimes against humanity. Keiko started her political life during her father's government at the age of 19 when she became First Lady. She took the post from her mother, who was removed after denouncing Alberto Fujimori for kidnapping and torturing her with electrical shocks. Official estimates indicate that the government of Fujimori was responsible for the murdering of close to 20,000 people and the embezzlement of $6 billion from the public funds. Some of that money was used to finance the education and livelihood of Keiko and her siblings in the United States.
There were 4 children that studied in foreign universities, all in the United States. But the state prosecutor said there is no way to explain where the money which Keiko Fujimori and her siblings have studied come from.
In 2000, Fujimori's regime collapsed after a massive corruption scandal that started when videos were released showing his right hand, Vladimiro Montesinos, made multi-millionaire deals by handing piles of cash payment to politicians, military officials, judges, media executives, and prominent businessmen. When her father fled to Japan after the scandal, Keiko took over as the leader of the party, and in 2006 she was elected congresswoman. Continuing that path, after her father was repatriated and imprisoned, in 2011 she ran for president. However, most analysts believe her father ran the campaign from behind bars.
Fujimori would meet with all those aspiring to post. He would receive the money, and Keiko was simply the person that would only open and close the door. The last word was his.
In that election, Keiko obtained the most votes in the first round, but lost in the second against current President Ollanta Humala, whose campaign included clear condemnations of her father's crimes. Nowadays, Keiko is attempting to separate herself from the crimes of her father.
I have suffered and carried a very heavy baggage because of my mistakes by third parties. And I will never allow for my daughters to carry that baggage that I have carried for so many years.
However, Keiko Fujimori continues to be surrounded by people closely connected with her father and many of doubtful reputation, such as Joaquin Ramirez, Secretary General of the party and currently being investigated by the state prosecutor for money laundering. Cecilia Chacon, first on Keiko's list of candidates for Congress and convicted for corruption in 2012. Her brother Kenji Fujimori is another congressional candidate but owns a business site where 100 kilos of cocaine were found. These among others.
The European Union and Cuba have signed a deal to normalize relations 13 years after those relations were suspended. The deal paves the way for the 28-member bloc to establish full economic cooperation and aid with the Caribbean nation. Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez witnessed the signing of the pact at a ceremony in Havana along with the EU's foreign policy chief, Federica Mogherini.
This agreement allows us to...
Ben Carson has confirmed that he is backing Donald Trump for the U.S. presidency. Carson made the endorsement at a joint news conference with Trump in Florida ahead of primaries there on Tuesday. During the press conference, Carson explained why he is now endorsing his former rival.
One of the real factors for me is what will happen if we allow the political operatives to succeed in their endeavor to stop Donald Trump. I think it would fracture the party irreparably, and it would hand the election to the Democrats.
Aid agencies located at the refugee camp at the Greek-Macedonia border say they are stretched to their limit. As many as 14,000 refugees are housed in the camp, with many more arriving daily despite the border closures. Humanitarian workers say that the conditions at the camp are desperate.
Look, I mean, I think that the state of play here at Domini speaks for itself. It's a lot of people crammed up against the border, surrounded by mud, surrounded by water, surrounded by puddles, with really inadequate shelters. All of them waiting to know what's going to happen next week at the EU summit.
The United Nations says South Sudan is perpetrating war crimes as reports of mass rape emerge. The fighters are being allowed to rape women, raid cattle, and steal personal property in place of wages. The Arab League has declared Lebanese movement Hezbollah a terrorist group. It happened at the Arab League foreign ministers meeting at the organization's seat in Egypt's capital Cairo earlier today. The Gulf Cooperation Council has also adopted the same position. Tens of thousands of Iraqi Shiites are protesting for a third week. They are demanding the government implement political and economic reforms. The Chinese foreign minister visited President Vladimir Putin in Moscow to strengthen bilateral ties, as well as to discuss Putin's upcoming visit to China. Moscow is deepening its economic ties with China as its relations with the West fray over the Ukraine crisis. A lantern lighting ceremony marked the 5th anniversary of the earthquake and tsunami that led to the Fukushima nuclear disaster. The event was held in the Miyagi Prefecture and was just one of the many held across Japan. Students also performed dance routines to honor the victims of the disaster. The International Association of Athletics Federations has extended the ban on Russia from international competition, raising fears that it might miss out on the Rio Olympics. A report from an IAAF task force revealed that while Russia made progress in the wake of its doping suspension in November, the task force said that there is still significant work to be done to satisfy conditions for Russia's reinstatement. Preparations were underway at the Royal Albert Hall in London ahead of a concert celebrating iconic Western movie themes. The 21st Century Symphony Orchestra and Chorus, led by conductor Ludwig Wicki, will perform music from Western movies and TV scores. According to Wicki, Westerns were appealing because they captured the imagination like a dream. For more on these and other stories, you can visit our website, telesurtv.net/English, and you can visit us on Twitter, Instagram, and on Facebook. From all of us here at TeleSur English, have a great evening. Bye.